following is my own true story from my personal experience. They do not speak on behalf of the United States Marine Corps or any other U.S. Marine.
There are people who enlist in the United States Marines who do not know how to swim. And I'm not talking about, oh, they can't swim 20 miles and fist fight a shark. I'm talking about people who literally have not been in a pool of water deeper than they can stand prior to going to boot camp. And so in this video, I'm not just going to be explaining what Marine Corps swim qualification is, but also what happens to people who go to boot camp and don't know how to swim, and how I failed swim qualification in boot camp and still became a Marine. Don't worry, I'll explain everything. But before we get into the story, this video is a big thank you to everyone for reaching 70,000 subscribers. Whether or not you sub to me for my stories, gaming videos, or just yap sessions, I am extremely grateful that you are here. And if you're new to the channel, please feel free to check out any other episodes that you have missed alongside my civilian storytime videos if you're itching for more stories. With that being said, I first need to explain what Marine Corps swim qualification even is. If you enlist in the Marines, you will be swimming. Yes, I know that is a crazy concept, but like I was saying, there are people who enlist who straight up do not know how to swim. These people are what we refer to as iron ducks, and they are not some kind of fringe outlier in boot camp. If you enlist, especially during the summertime when platoon sizes are bigger, I guarantee you that you will see at least one recruit drowning during swim qualification. So why would anyone join the Marines but not know how to swim? Well, there are people that enlist who have this idea that being in boot camp and when under pressure, they'll magically gain the ability to swim. Now, if that is you, I'm not saying it's impossible to learn how to swim in boot camp, but I am on my hands and knees and thighs begging you to at least consider learning how to swim, or at least getting in the pool before you go to boot camp, because I promise you that you will not be having a good time if your first ever swim instructor is a drill instructor. There is another type of recruit whose recruiters straight up lie to them, and yes, recruiters do lie, or stretch the truth, shall we say. Not calling anyone specifically a liar, or you watching this if you're a recruiter, I'm just saying that some recruiters do stretch the truth. And one of the lies they tell someone wanting to enlist who doesn't know how to swim is something along the lines of, oh, don't worry, they'll teach you how to swim in boot camp, it'll be easy. Please do not blindly believe them. Furthermore, you are swimming in boots and full camis, so I promise you that if you can't swim while swimming in swimming trunks, or butt naked if you're a freaky fuck, you will not be able to swim with a pair of boots on. And so in boot camp, you do basic swim qualification, unless your MOS, aka your specific job in the military, requires you to do intermediate swim qual or something else, which mine did not. Basic swim qualification involves a 25-meter swim, a 15-foot tower jump, and then you swim 25 meters, a 4-minute water tread, an underwater gear shed, and then a 25-meter swim with a main pack. The point of swim qualification, at least in boot camp, is to make sure that you can do basic shit and not drown to death if you fall into a 10-foot deep body of water. But if you don't know how to swim, which was actually a decent amount of people in boot camp, swim qualification easily shoots up to one of the hardest and one of the most embarrassing and stressful events in boot camp. And so with that being said, let's get into the story. At MCRD San Diego, which is where I went to boot camp, swim qualification is conducted on the 4th week of training, and there is an entire week dedicated to swim qual. When that Monday came around, our platoon would march to the swim qualification building from our squad bay, the squad bay being where we lived. Pretty much all of the buildings at MCRD San Diego has this color scheme where the walls are this sandy beige color while the roofs are red, and the only thing I distinctly remember about the swim qual building was these sets of arches that we had to march next to before we stopped and then entered the building. Once we got in and organized, they made us run through some shower heads spraying us with cold water, and then we entered what I can only describe as a long walk-in closet with a bunch of soaking wet camis and boots for us to put on. Finding a set of camis was easy enough. I grabbed a set of damp uniforms and put them on, but now I had to look for some boots. We have two distinct types of boots in the Marines, what we call combat boots and jungle boots. Combat boots were these waterproof and sealed boots that most people think of when it comes to boots, while jungle boots had this mini mesh covered hole at the sides near the bottom for not just ventilation, but to also drain out any water, and as the name implies, you would typically wear them in hotter, more humid or wet environments. requirements. As we are going to be swimming, everyone wanted jungle boots for obvious reasons, and I'm not sure if they just didn't care, which is definitely a possibility, or if it was a mistake, but they had a bunch of combat boots and not enough jungle boots. So it became a mini battle royale as everyone was scrambling to get boots with holes in them that actually fit them. And I wear an 11.5, so I had no problem sizing down to a size 11. The problem was that everyone else that came before me already grabbed the common sizes, and so I was just left with some Looney Tunes ass boots. I could not find a pair of boots remotely close to my size. I am tweaking out, scrambling around, going boot to boot looking for something that didn't look like clown shoes. And so after a few minutes, and it's not like I could just sit in there and take a nap, I ended up grabbing a set of size 13 jungle boots, which were way too big for me. But hey, at least they had the drainage holes. We all gather up on some bleachers and out comes the swim instructor. He starts giving us instructions on what we will be doing for this event, how to blow air into your blouse and inflate it like a life jacket, etc, etc. Near the end of this instruction period, he looks at all of us and says something along the lines of, I know some of you can't swim, so you might as well let us know now because we're gonna find out in 5 minutes anyways. Maybe 2-3 hands go up, but nobody else says a thing. I don't know if it's because the people who can swim thought it was some kind of trick question, but after this speech, we get walked over to the first event, which was the 25-meter swim. All of us line up along one side of the pool, 10 or so across, and then we jump in one row at a time. Once we jumped in, we grab the edge of the pool, and then we wait for a command where we then proceed to swim to the other side. I was one of the first rows to jump in, and so it's not long before I'm kicking off the side of the pool, and I immediately felt like my boots were about to fly off my feet. After I swim the 25 meters and get out of the pool, I had a chance to watch other people swim. Now, we were doing this event on the shallow end of the pool where the water was like 4 feet deep or something. It was not deep at all. Shallow enough to where you could stand if you were drowning, but deep enough where you could, well, still swim. Some people that couldn't swim were trying to hop along the floor or just sort of waltz their way to the other side, and the swim instructors obviously would catch them and they would signal them to get out of the pool and they would put their hands on their head, all that. And people who failed this event were thrown into an isolated section of the pool where there was another instructor giving swim lessons. In fact, the moment your feet touched the bottom of the pool, you failed the event. And I'm pretty sure there was also an instructor underneath the water watching all of our feet. Freaky bastard. And there was a whole bunch of people that washed out during this first event. At least 20 if not more. The entire point of this 25-meter swim was to just weed out the people who could not swim so that they didn't drown in the second event, the 15 feet tower jump. And so once I finished the 25-meter swim, I had to walk to the deep end of the pool where the diving boards were. We all line up in the order we got there, and because I was one of the first ones to finish the first event, I was near the front of the line for the tower jump. The tower jump is supposed to simulate abandoning ship. So once you get to the edge of the diving board, you need to cross your legs in a certain way so that if you did have to jump overboard in real life, the impact of hitting the water wouldn't shatter your bones and do all that. Once you hit the water and start to swim back up, as you break the water, you're supposed to do a sweeping motion with one of your arms to clear any hypothetical debris above and around you. You then swim 25 meters or something like that to a marker where you then proceed to swim to the side of the pool and get out. This event does scare some people, and this was actually the first event I saw someone drowning or almost drowning. If you are one of the people who are too scared to jump, the instructor will shove you in as you're holding up the entire line and there's a schedule to be followed. One dude was so terrified, he literally just froze at the diving board. And I thought he was scared of heights, but when he got shoved off the diving board and hit the water, I saw nothing but a flurry of splashes like dude was wrestling with a fish or something, and the lifeguard people had to save him by throwing in a floaty thing and then jumping in afterwards. There were also a few others that froze up when about to jump, but hey, my best advice is you're gonna end up in the water either by yourself or with some extra help. So you might as well just jump. But overall, if you could swim 25 meters in the first event, you should be able to do pretty much the exact same thing at the deep end with the addition of a jump, unless you panic like the guy I was talking about. Now we get to the event that is usually the hardest for most people. The 4-minute water tread / float where you have to remain above water at the deep end for 4 minutes. My best advice for this event is to do a back float. Suck air into your lungs and then lean back. You can easily practice this at any community pool or if you have a pool in your backyard, lucky you. But anyways, this is not hard to practice and usually it's one of the first things you learn when it comes to swimming. Many people fail the water tread event because they start to panic and freak the fuck out. And this is where I saw my second almost drowning encounter. encounter. Maybe 3 minutes had passed since the start of the event, and I was just laid back, eyes closed, and just floating on my back because there's nothing else to do, right? And then I feel some water splash over my face. There's a whole group of us in the pool, so I didn't really think too much about it. Maybe just some guy repositioning, or maybe just a guy getting a little bit too crazy with treading water, until I felt more splashes, and then I opened my eyes just in time to see an instructor rescuing a dude flailing around in the water. The one thing that stuck with me to this day was just how eerily quiet this dude was while he was in the middle of drowning. He wasn't screaming like help, help like in the movies, but he was just bobbing up and down while flailing, almost like he was having a water fight with himself. Now, I have no idea how this guy made it 3 minutes floating or treading in water before he started quote unquote drowning, because it couldn't have been more than a minute after this dude was rescued before the rest of us reached the 4-minute timer. My best guess is that dude was treading water extremely inefficiently and ended up exhausting himself or cramping up. But again, if you learn how to float on your back, this event is not hard. And now we get to the event that I failed, the underwater gear shed, which is considered to be the easiest event because you literally aren't even swimming. I know this is gonna sound like crazy cope, but hear me out, right? Hear me out. We go back to the shallow end and get dressed with a flak jacket, helmet, and rifle, and I'm once again near the front of the line, maybe third or fourth from the front. We jump in and we only get a few meters away from the edge of the pool before we're told to turn around and face our instructors. The water is 4 feet deep. I'm not claiming to be a giant, I'm 5'11", but the water was at or a little bit above my crotch. So to go underwater, you have to either pop a squat or lean forward so that the water covers your entire body. The instructor tells us to go underwater, and the moment that I am under, I drop my rifle. Easy, I was just holding on to that. My helmet was already unbuckled, and I barely have to do anything to take it off my head as it kind of just floats off, and that just leaves me with the flak jacket. Keep in mind, dropping the rifle and taking off the helmet took me probably, and everyone else, less than 3 seconds because they were super easy to take off. And how you take off the flak jacket is that you yank open a Velcro flap in the front and then unvelcro the sides of the flak jacket. I mean, it's not hard. As I'm taking off my flak jacket, the back of my head leaves the water. Keep in mind, my face is still underwater. I'm not breathing. I do not have gills. And I don't know if the swim instructor thought my face off the water, which it did not, by the way, but hey, I don't claim to have iron lungs, but I also promise you I can hold my breath longer than 5 seconds. But that was enough. Where after I took off my flak jacket, I was told that I failed the event. I could not believe it. I thought he was just going to make me redo it with the next group or just by myself, but of course, this is boot camp, not a one-on-one spa treatment center. And so I had to walk to the window of shame, give them my name, and I was told to come back the next day to redo the entire swim quali event, and I'm not gonna lie, I was mad embarrassed. I changed on my wet camis and boots, and then we get into a detail formation, which is like 10 people, and then we march back to the squad bay as a group. The next morning, I'm back at the swim building with a bunch of other people that failed, and there was probably around 30 of us, if not more. I don't know the exact count, but there was definitely a notable size of people. This time I passed, no problems, and the last event, which I didn't do the day before, was a 25-meter swim with a main pack, except it wasn't hard at all because the main pack literally floats, so it's like you're swimming with a kickboard. But the problem with not knowing how to swim before coming into boot camp isn't because you can't learn. It isn't because the instructors don't know how to teach, but because those who don't know how to swim, especially at 18, 19 years old, which is the majority of people at boot camp, has usually already developed a fear of swimming by that age. And so, as you can imagine, being terrified of the water while in boot camp with the added pressure to pass while being taught by a drill instructor who isn't exactly there to be your friend isn't exactly the best environment to be in to get over your fear of water. Some people in that swim group looked miserable. And yes, while you do get multiple attempts and you can get recycled, which means you get dropped back a week and join another platoon to redo swim week all over again, and you have therefore another week to learn, you can also fail boot camp. And so what happens if you fail? In boot camp, you have your standard training platoons. You also have other oddball ones that serve different purposes. For example, MRP, or the Medical Recovery Platoon, or what we call the Broke Dick Platoon, is if you get injured but haven't quit, and they'll keep you in there as long as you need until you heal up, and they'll send you right back to training. There is the PCP, aka the Physical Conditioning Platoon, or what we call the Pork Chop Platoon, where you are sent if you are overweight, can't run, can't do pull-ups, fail your physical fitness test, or something like that. This platoon will have more workouts, runs, etc., and I hear it's miserable to be in, but I don't know the exact details since I was never in it. And then we have the most infamous one, the black sheep of all platoons, the platoon that everyone avoided like they had leprosy, RSP, Recruit Separation Platoon. These are individuals who failed boot camp. Now, to be fair, some in this platoon had legitimate reasons, like a crazy bad injury that it needed to be sent home for, but most of them were indeed there because they had quit one way or another. We call this platoon the Recon Sniper Platoon as a joke, and they were easily identifiable because they had a huge RSP letters written on their green shirts, so that whenever you saw them walking around the depot, it was extremely obvious that they were recruits that had quit. We recruits in the training platoons were not allowed to speak to them, although I did manage to talk to one in medical during boot camp when I had pneumonia. Another story. Anyways, and so after an intense day of training, our drill instructors would sometimes make us like take a knee and watch RSP recruits file by while they were telling us that we do not want to be like those shitbags over there. RSP was hated by essentially everyone on the depot, and there would be legendary stories circulating around the depot about RSP. There was one story where a recruit wanted to be sent home as early as he could because he couldn't take it anymore, and he threw himself off a staircase and tried to shatter his femur. There was another story of recruits who couldn't handle training trying to third deck themselves, which is when someone tries to throw themselves off the third floor of a building before they added bars and all that stop recruits from trying to fly. And so if you can't pass swim qual or quit, that is where you will end up. Every single week of boot camp was memorable for me for its own reasons, but swim week was especially memorable because I got a free government-sponsored pool party. If you like my stories, please feel free to check out my civilian ones alongside my other Marine Corps Chronicles stories, and also my gaming videos if you want to see me game with my identical twin brother and learn some cool history and military facts. But regardless of what you do, thank you for watching and I hope you have a nice day.